We today really need to talk about the industry behind motorcycle repair shops. Because if you've been feeling recently like you're bringing a motorcycle to the repair shop and get a ridiculously expensive bill, often over a sizable amount of the motorcycle's purchasing price, and the issue is either not fixed or you straight up have a new issue and you feel like you're getting ripped off, maybe you actually are, and we're going to talk about that today. I'm not here with my usual microphone because my audio recording device broke, but let's get into this video. And with that, welcome back to the Free Mouse MC. I've been putting off making this video for a really long time. I only wanted to make this video earlier this year. However, now I actually found more solutions that I can also give you so that this is not just a complaint video. And also, I've experienced this issue multiple times myself, not just from the side of this happening to me or to my friends, but also working in the motorcycle industry and seeing it from the other side. And yeah, this is due to a multitude of systemic reasons in the motorcycle industry and in our current economic situation as a whole. So let's get into it. Determining if you've gotten scammed with a motorcycle repair can often be quite hard because it often is just a feeling and you cannot determine it 100%. I, however, had a few situations where I'm pretty certain. I had a situation where I went to a motorcycle garage that I also worked for at the time and asked them to do labor on my bike that was mainly about a bearing for $400. And without further discussion, more work was done on my bike that was partially not necessary, most likely, and also was done really badly. And the bill, without discussion about this again, went up to 2,700 euros. So 400 to 2,700 is quite the increase. And this also happened with my own employer at the time. So double bad, basically. Someone could have just told me whenever I came into the office. During that repair, also the carburetors were touched, which maybe was necessary. I, at the time, didn't have the mechanic expertise to see if it was. However, I later gained that expertise and opened up that motorcycle and realized multiple parts were missing and the work was done really improperly, leading to more and more issues. And also the shop told me that there were more issues on my bike that were not existing, like a slipping clutch, and I tried everything to get the clutch to slip. However, it was an obvious attempt to get more money out of me even at that point. I had another situation where I had a motorcycle that still had 2 years of warranty, and to keep the warranty, I always went to a service center to keep my warranty because I was riding the motorcycle quite a lot. And I paid to get also my brake liquid serviced multiple times over a period of 20,000 kilometers. And this work was most likely never done, but always I got charged for it at multiple dealerships because I found out that the brake liquid was like weeks after service, still completely brown. And how did I find that out? Going down a mountain and grabbing into a break of nothing, which is the worst way to find this out. Luckily, nothing happened, but when I then serviced the brakes myself, which I was capable of at the time, I just didn't do it because of my warranty, I found out that the liquid must have been like 4 to 5 years old, the way it looked. It was completely brown. I could fill a whole video with just stories like this that I experienced myself or friends have experienced or that I saw from the other side while working in this industry. It's the stuff like blown up engines just kilometers after getting a new head gasket, to people crashing because of improper front wheel install, or screws being forgotten or not tightened properly in a clutch assembly and everything just rattling everywhere and no damages being replaced, just closing it up again and sending it out. However, instead, we're now getting into the causes that make this a common experience when bringing a motorcycle to a repair shop. And the first aspect here is that motorcycle repair is specialized labor, and sometimes more specialized even than car repair. And in many countries, these are two different trades. And finding people in this trade to work for a repair shop can get pretty hard. In Germany, my home country, we have a word for this. It's called the Fachkräftemangel. And this is most likely a similar phenomenon across Europe and the United States of basically there being a lack of specialized workers. However, it sounds like there's just a lack of these workers. That's not the right description. There's a lack of specialized workers that are willing to work for absolute dog shit wages. Because people in the motorcycle industry are significantly underpaid. Wages in Germany, around where I live, for motorcycle mechanics range between minimum wage to €14.50. And a lot of the people that I know that work this job reported a wage of around €13. The rules of demand and supply apparently don't apply when it comes to trade jobs like motorcycle mechanics. I actually, for some time, considered becoming a motorcycle mechanic myself. But when working in a place like that and sitting next to someone who's double your age, who has to support a whole family on that while freezing in the break room, doesn't really make this enticing. Especially at the time of working that job, I already had to move back home with my parents for the third time in my life for economic reasons. And then looking at learning that trade, it would have meant to live with my parents, which was not possible and I didn't want for another 4 years, because the amount of money you get while basically learning is not enough to even rent a room in shared housing. Of course, with working conditions like this, the motorcycle repair industry has problems attracting workers. So a lot of people get into this job that are not trained mechanics and that just did this in their free time and then got a job at some point in this. So you have a lot of people who are not properly trained to do this, which can lead to bad repairs. However, it's not the main reason. Because another thing that really plays in here is that with these conditions, a lot of older people don't necessarily enjoy or like teaching young people who are either learning this as a trade or are working in that industry. Very often it's then said, oh yeah, people from Gen Z are like super lazy. It doesn't make sense to teach them anything. And as a result, I had this myself. I started then working on motorbikes and started working on motorbikes in my free time and basically asked coworkers of basically what I should do. And basically the majority of feedback was, it will never work, I'm incompetent and it's all shit. And there were only 2 of my coworkers who are still really dear friends who were like just showing me how to do stuff and occasionally like answered questions and explained stuff. And this is a similar situation for a lot of people that learn this as a trade in school, that are then in companies basically supposed to learn more, but this is the feedback that they're getting. The majority of people doesn't learn anymore how to rework a carburetor or anything because it's not in the school curriculum, and at the same time the people in the shop don't show that because I think it could be a worry of threatening your own working position in this. And this is kind of the dynamic that young and older workers have. And then when the older workers retire, the knowledge just gets lost. Like right now in my area, I cannot call a place to work on carburetors. If I have a carburetor problem, I'm doing that stuff myself, not because I want to, but because I have to. However, when looking at a problem like this, it's important to not just look at the workers, but also at the companies that are run. And the thing here is that a lot of places that repair motorcycles also sell motorcycles on the side to cover their cost. And really often the margins here are super thin, and motorcycles are a seasonal business that relies on summer. So in the winter, revenue falls off a cliff. I know this myself from my YouTube channel. All graphs are going down on the 1st of November. And this makes the industry fluctuate a lot. So whenever there's financial trouble, bikes are basically just being pushed out as soon as they're somewhat running, even though everyone knows they're not going to last. And this also gets worsened by a lot of motorcycles on the road, truthfully, not being profitable to repair in the first place, because a bike that has suffered some corrosion, and this applies to a lot of bikes who are 12 to 15 years old, as soon as you try to loosen a screw, every screw that you remove can turn into a 2-hour job. And with a hourly rate that the store sells the labors of their workers for, that costs $150 to the end customer, it gets tough to justify these prices, and you then cannot really charge that for the simplest forms of labor that really often then result in hours of work that is not really foreseeable in the beginning. And then often in economic tough times, this gets worsened by customers being purposefully overcharged, and also work that is claimed to be done and just not being done because the bike still runs. This is a really common issue on service work. Another factor is the word repairing changed its meaning. Back in the day, people actually repaired motorcycles, so per se, or cars, in the sense of when there was an issue and the part was maybe not available, or there was something that was wrong in the motorbike from its engineering standpoint to begin with, that then something was changed about that. That is not necessarily possible anymore, the way that these vehicles are regulated, and also how companies run their own licensed repair shops, and basically everything that is broken is getting replaced. And this, of course, opens the door for things like built-in obsolescence of things breaking as a business model, because something that is really reliable and easy to fix is not necessarily profitable. In addition to that, the price for repair, of course, is also getting worse by through practices of the motorcycle company itself, through more technology in the motorcycle that then requires a certain software to read, and there's a license for that software from the motorcycle brand itself, essentially creating a monopoly on motorcycle repairs, leading to big companies charging extra. Of course, this is a sign of a bigger economic trend. However, there are other influences of bigger economic trends that result to really weird dynamics which are tough to grasp if you've never worked in that industry. One thing, for example, is the change between old to young people owning motorcycle repair shops and basically being entrepreneurs in that sense. For example, a lot of these people then fall for get-rich-quick coachings. Sounds really weird right now, but this is a genuine problem in the area where I live, where multiple car and motorcycle repair shops are in a coaching called Mission Mittelstand, which basically translates to mission middle class, for basically escaping the middle class in like a get-rich-quick scheme type of way. And then people spending, first of all, insane amounts of money of the business on this kind of shit, and then learning all the wrong things there. Like, for example, getting out of the day-to-day business as quick as possible was one of the things that I often heard from companies that were involved in this kind of stuff. Has catastrophic effects if you work in a repair business. And this forms of mismanagement can lead to potential bankruptcy. At the place where I worked a few years ago, I actually experienced a situation like this, where from one day to the next, the money was gone, wages didn't come. Me and all my colleagues basically almost became homeless. I had the luck of already being economically in a situation where I had to live with my parents, so couldn't get any worse, I guess. And then, of course, when criticizing these structures, I got fired. And if this now sounds really abstract, this is a more and more common experience. When I drive around my town and look at motorcycle and car repair shops, I see more and more little labels of these coaching businesses on the outside door. And I know it doesn't mean anything good. And of course, this kind of attitude that then people who are a bit younger in their 30s and run a shop like that towards their workers can also lead to really bad morale. Like, I had the situation, underpaid in the break room, and my boss walks in and is like, everyone can make it in Germany. You are just lazy. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, why in my work break now this shit? Why is a live Patrick Bateman edit happening during my lunch break? What the fuck? And if you put all these minor factors together, they create a perfect storm that results in really high prices for motorcycle repairs, bad conditions for the people that work in that industry, and really bad repairs. And it has resulted in a situation where you cannot even where you can even warn of certain manufacturers, because basically every place is potentially just really, really bad. Whenever I talk to people about motorcycle repair places, the answer that I always get when I say, oh, I had a bad experience here, they say, well, which place isn't bad today? And I think it's really important to talk about where you can go, where you can get good repairs. First of all, use your local network of people you know. Sometimes you've grown up with someone who maybe does motorcycle repairs, or like your parents have grown up with someone who already owns a business in that sense, and you're kind of exchanging goods all the time locally anyway. Those are safer places to go. That's, for example, the structures that I used to get my car repaired, and I never had an issue with that, of being overcharged or a bad repair ever in a really, really long time. Another thing that you can do is start repairing your motorcycle yourself. Motorcycles are relatively simple, and you can buy a motorcycle with repairability in mind. A lot of motorcycles that are still on the used market from Japan are really, really easy to fix yourself. It takes time, it takes financial investment for the tools and everything, and also for occasionally fucking something up, but it in general will be cheaper all in all than getting a brake pad change and an oil change at your next repair shop. Another thing that you can use to avoid this situation are community garages. Community garages are becoming more and more common because everyone is feeling these effects. Everyone is like, this is crazy expensive and the work is bad, and like some people can't afford it. Other people are not willing to pay for shitty work. Basically, community garages are where people come together on a fitness center type of subscription for like, I don't know, $30 a month or something, and work together on bikes where all tools are supplied. It's kind of a new model that's coming out of the ground. I featured some of this stuff on my channel with the Kraftwerk in Berlin, and also with the mechanic shop in Higley that where I met the people from on the Malamal festival. And in a way, this is basically the new economic structure that at the moment is emerging from the motorcycle repair industry basically failing the majority of customers. And at the same time, of course, there are bigger factors at play here. Motorcycles in itself is kind of a dying hobby. Well, not completely dying, at least for people who earn an average wage and just want to spend money on something that makes them happy. More and more motorcycles are becoming a rich people toy. If you look at the cost of license and getting into a really cheap motorcycle that is new right now, you're paying so much money that it's basically completely ridiculous for anyone who's like in their 20s and 30s. So with the restructuring of this whole industry itself, those are kind of the ways that you can go about not becoming victim to really high prices and really bad repairs. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it was genuinely helpful, and that I managed to basically save some guys from high repairs and gave also to the problem at hand some solutions. Definitely like and subscribe, and see you in the next video.